in a weird way. All right. Welcome to the podcast, Philip. Um, you know, um, First of all, let's just start with generic introductions. If anybody has been looking at, if that one person that has watched my podcast so far has been looking at my podcast, they knew who you are. But if to the newer audience who might be running past this in their feed or or may see this in the aftermath of this podcast, why don't we just introduce yourself? And then introductory question would be, we're entering into the 2026 season. A lot of everybody has New Year's resolutions. I'm not quite sure whether that's played out or not, but everybody's usually doing something new or refined going into this year with regards to resetting their goals. I would imagine, because that's sort of the tradition that comes from that. What's something new or refined that you're doing or continuing to do going into the 2026 season? So those two things, just introduce yourself and then talk about something new that you're doing.
All right, awesome. I'll do that. So I'm Philip Mason with Incredible Fathers. So it's a nonprofit organization, 501c3, excuse me. And so we have an opportunity to help men become better husbands and fathers. And we do that through some online coursework and also through local outreach. So we do that. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. And you can check us out on YouTube at Incredible Fathers on our podcast there. As far as goals go for this new year, I think one of the things that's been really important for me to emphasize with a lot of the men that I've seen is to continue to date their wives. So if they're married, continue to have that ongoing relationship with your wife and to schedule a regular time, whether it's a Friday or a Saturday night or whatever your work schedule is, make sure you have that designated time to go out and to spend time with your wife and to get to know her and maintain that relationship. So that's something I'm working on this year, is to continue to build that relationship with my wife. Another piece of that is is working on my own health. And one of the realizations that I'm having, so I have 7 children, but my youngest is now 8 years old. And now that I'm getting more sleep and rest at night, I'm realizing that how sleep deprived I was as a father. And now some of you would say, well, of course, you've got 7 kids. Of course, you're going to be sleep deprived. But I think, there's more that I could have done to be proactive in getting enough sleep and enough rest. And it's difficult for fathers if they're not getting enough sleep and rest. That really changes their outlook on the whole world, and they can be very grumpy, very irritable, and behave not the best at work or not the best towards their wife or children, and so that becomes a really real thing. So it's a caution, but also an opportunity to improve yourself by getting enough sleep. But the other 2 factors too, is getting enough exercise and also getting enough nutrition too, eating the right types of foods, eating real food, getting your fruits and your vegetables and getting plenty of protein from good natural sources. So all those things are really important to me, and I'm encouraging those with the men that I interact with. So,
how many men do you interact with monthly or weekly?
Anywhere between we're anywhere between about 10 and 30.
Okay, that's solid. Solid group of people. Okay.
Yeah.
When you were mentioning you had 7 children, I was like, "Ooh, I got a question. One of my clients is dying for an answer. You're a man of faith. You believe in contributing to your household as a man. You talk about balance with regards to dating your wife and health. Sometimes it can be extremely difficult when you have a lot of kids to incorporate things that are healthy for your relationship and also for yourself. So, I have an anonymous person. That person shall be named not anonymous. Has a lot of kids. Like a lot of men are strong in faith and in stature, and they struggle with balance because there's always the kid latched to their hips during this season of their life. How did you balance that out, or how do you balance that out, or what's your perspective on what balance looks like when you have a lot of kids that range from like 5 or let's say you got an infant that weighs all the way from 1 year old all the way to like 10 or 12 years old. How does one balance that when when you got all these moving pieces around you all the time that have to be sort of tended to? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's difficult, it's challenging, it's something you grow into. But I think it's as one of the things that's been most influential to me is just being a good being linked up properly with my spouse. And so we're co-pilots, co-captains in this endeavor of raising a family. And so I think being on the same page has made a huge difference. So we do what we call family executive council. We have it on Sundays, usually towards the end of the day, and we plan out that week. And so we go to the calendar. We also talk about the needs of each of our children. What's most important for that child this week that we need to address as a couple.
Okay.
And then we make a game plan for that week. Like, how are we going to address this? When are we going to do it? We also pick a night where we're going to be together all together as a family. We're going to have an opportunity just to talk and maybe do an activity together or play a game. So we plan those things out on a weekly basis. And then, for those things that are further out, we'll also spend a little time talking about those. If we want to plan something for the summer, a recreational activity, we'll plan that out. So I think having that, we call it FEC, Family Executive Council, and that really helps us plan and prepare for the things that are coming up. And that way, I don't know how it is for you, but like for me personally, like if something's just dropped on me, like on an instant, it's hard sometimes to pivot and change because you already got so much momentum in one direction. You're already carrying a heavy load, a lot to do. And so if something comes up and you're expected just to pivot or do it on a dime, that can be kind of difficult. But if you've thought about it, you planned it out, prepared for it, for that being that week, it becomes a lot easier. So, if I went home from work and, my wife was just like, this has got to be done with this child right now today. And I'm like, well, I had to get this done. And I also had this scheduled a little bit later this evening. I don't know how that's all going to work. But if we've tag teamed it together at the beginning of the week and we decided, okay, you're going to manage this, I'm going to manage that. We're going to do this together. We're going to do this together. It's in your mind. It just, the process of flow is just so much better.
How does one make time for themselves and for their relationship when they have that many kids? Are you sort of? I would imagine that people are a little bit stuck in a certain you're stuck without with having to have a kid latched to you, especially if you got like a 1 year old or infant. Like there's no way out of economically being able to have one-on-one time and couples time. Like how do you manage that on your end? Like am I talking, is that realistic conversation? Like I've had these type of conversations, but it's like, Larry, it is impossible. Like we can go on a date, but the baby's coming with us. Like I just can't afford to balance it in such a way where I have my own isolated time all the so you get where I'm going with that question, kind of like how do you what does the support system look like when you got 7 kids in such a way where you can have a healthy relationship and also have healthy self-care?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of different ways you can look at it. So one of the ways my wife and I looked at it, we're just like, we're going through a phase in our life. It's not going to last forever. We're going through a phase in our life where we are making sacrifices. We are consecrated as parents, and we want to have a nice, big, beautiful family where, down the road, we want to have grandchildren and maybe great grandchildren. And we want to have, a big, happy family. And, we kind of have this vision of where we want to go. And so we understand in the short term, we're going to have this decade where we're kind of, especially in my case, where I have 7 kids, where, we're a little bit more tied to home than what most people are. And so just being willing to make that sacrifice. And so a lot of times what my wife and I would do is, we are going to have an infant in arms a lot of times. And, we're not going to be able to hand that baby off to anyone. So sometimes we'll get a babysitter for the other kids and we'll go out do dinner or go for a walk, put the baby in a stroller and have talk time. And we realize, our dates are going to be a little modified. We're not going to be as able to be as social as what we normally would be able to, but we still make time for those opportunities. And there's been times where, we've had grandma and grandpa who have been able to take the baby for a short period of time. We've been able to go out for an hour or 2 hours, maybe, and just be able to have some free time on that. So having family that can do that's a huge blessing. Or if there's, we've, in some of the areas where we've lived, we haven't had grandparents close by. So we have, in our church congregation, we'll have, adopted grandparents from our congregation who we trust, we highly trust, and sometimes they'll watch our kids for us.
Nice.
Especially the really young ones who, they're experienced parents, grandparents, and they'll watch them for them. So we go out and have that time together. And so it may not happen every week, but you may try to make it happen as often as possible.
Is it important to have that support system around you and to build that support system? How did you build your support system?
Yeah, you have to be very conscientious about it. It's not going to just happen automatically. And so I think, like a lot of times I'll turn to my church family for that, or my church congregation for that. That's usually the first place I go if I don't have immediate family. And so, you start by getting to know people, and you build that relationship of trust. You get to know them, and maybe you have them over for dinner, or they have you over for dinner, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you can get to that point where you're comfortable in saying, hey, my wife and I would like to go on a date. Would you be willing to watch our children for an hour and a half, or whatever it is? Do we just need some time together? And a lot of times they're more than willing to do that and help you out with that. So it can be great, especially for those older couples or more mature couples that maybe their kids have been gone for quite a while, and they have that. They love having some kids in the house again.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I talk about across the board is just finding ways to build your tribe of support. And everybody, none of us are, what do you call it, a monolith. None of us are to walk in pieces of isolation, and that the idea that God builds a relationship, starts with the man and the woman, and then it extends out to community, which includes church community. So, have you ever been in a point in your life, you got all these kids, I can say it like that, you got all these kids, so it's a lot,
It is, it's a lot.
You ever got to the point where you're extremely stressed out and overwhelmed by dealing with home life and work life and community life? And how did you deal with that stress?
Yeah, that's happened for me multiple times. I can think of one particular time. We were actually living in the Chicago area. I had recently finished up my master's degree at DePaul University in downtown Chicago.
Nice.
And my wife, we were just in an apartment because we were transitioning between jobs. And so I'd gotten a new job, and then the company was actually preparing to move me to Massachusetts to work out there. And so we were kind of in this weird in between place. And the company that I was working at, they were having me work at multiple office locations. And so I was working these really long hours. I had a really long commute, and I would come home pretty wiped out from work. Like I was just giving it 110%. And it was crazy because at the time we had 3, and we had number 4 on the way in an apartment. We had a 3-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
And I remember it just felt like we were always changing diapers. It felt like we were always washing dishes. It felt like we were always doing laundry, and it felt like we were always, wiping runny noses. And so it was in this really difficult phase, and it was winter time, and it was just cold. The kids couldn't go outside, and we were just stuck in this apartment.
Yeah.
It was a really difficult time. And I remember telling my wife, we were just at the kitchen sink, and I was like, if we keep doing this like this, we're going to run ourselves right into the ground. We're not going to have She's like, I don't know what else to do, other than just keep trying and keep working at it.
Yeah.
And so we decided at that point that we need to do something to switch it up. And so we found ways to get out of the house, get the kids exposed, go out and socialize a little bit more. I there were some things I could do at work to kind of tone it down a little bit, and get home a little bit earlier. So I did those things, and we were able to get through that moment. But it took both of us thinking about ways that we can make this situation better, just so we can have a breather, because it kind of feels like Groundhog's Day after a while. It all starts stringing together.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, switching it up and keeping it fresh helps a lot.
Say the last part again.
Just switching it up, like you get into a routine and like
It's
doing
monotony.
something different
Yeah.
that you haven't done in a while. It could be something as simple as having a family game night, or going out to maybe have a night, go ice skating, which is something a lot of people do in the Chicago area, or go and visit with friends that we haven't visited with in a while, or going on a little road trip or something like that if the family funds allow for that. And to go and see some family you haven't seen in a while. Things like that can be really helpful.
I just want to operate. One of the things that I loved about previous conversations that I had with you, I'm so enamored by it that I really wanted to even bring it in. So to the session at some point between me and you is finances, and you talked about how you learn finances from your previous generation, kind of ish. I think that was a conversation. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, talked about that. Yeah.
I was so fascinated by that with regards to, I was like, man, I really would like to talk about it a little bit thoroughly. What how does one manage their finances with by having kids? I would imagine you guys on a tight budget. Presumptively, or maybe you guys were just overly blessed, and God bless you like Abraham and Jacob, and you're living it up over there with 7 kids. I don't know. How does one manage their finances successfully when they have a lot of kids?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people think, I saw one of my friends that actually posted on Facebook that says, it would say something like, in order for a woman to stay at home, a man needs to make over $100,000 a year, da 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 da. And that was the headline article. It was based off of inflation rates that the government just posted and everything. And I think a lot of times we have to do a little bit of a reality check, and we have to say, what are my actual needs? What do I actually need?
Right.
And I think a lot of times as Americans, we enjoy so much that a lot of times what used to be wants are now needs in our American society. And in a lot of ways, we're probably a little fat and sassy as Americans. And we probably could trim a lot more out of our lives than what we expect. That being said, our environment that we live in, our society that we live in, is very expensive, and we have had a lot of inflation. So, that's one of the reasons why I moved to the South. That's why I live in Arkansas, is because it's more family friendly, but also the cost of living is a lot lower here.
Yeah, no kidding.
Whereas, what's that?
I said, no kidding. I would imagine down south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the area that I'm in, the cost of living has been going up too, because everyone has discovered the same thing that I've discovered, that it's a great place to live. But we got out of the Chicago area, and then we got out of the Boston, Massachusetts area, because it is crazy expensive and taxes are super high. And so you have to manage those things. And so that's one of the reasons why we've moved down here, is because we could purchase a land and home much easier. And it was much more feasible, and groceries are cheaper and utilities are cheaper and everything here too. So typically with that FEC meeting that I talked about earlier, we also have just a family budget meeting. So and usually we do that when you realize income. So usually a couple times a month is typically the cadence, but at least doing it once a month, where you sit down and you discuss, okay, what expenses we have coming out? Is there anything that's unusual that's coming out? Is there anything that we need to spend money on that we haven't, that has been on kind of on the back burner, that we need to apply funds towards? How are we saving? Are we saving enough? Do we have an emergency savings in case things hit the fan?
Mhm.
Planning for, children's educational needs, things like that. So yeah, but budgets have been tight raising 7 kids, but my thing for everyone is just, it's totally doable. You just kind of have to trim, you have to trim some of the things that, you know, are wants, and just be really realistic about what you actually need.
Mhm.
And so my wife and I, we do forgo a lot of personal, um, hobbies and, I guess, expenditures that if we were single, we probably would do or engage in, if that makes sense. So
Give me an example. So we talk about this. You talk about society sort of like lavishes in things that they don't really need. Give me an example of things that you feel are unnecessary or that you personally have to cut out and says this is not necessary for me and my wife as pertains to my family, and because it prevents us from having a successful navigation financially. Like, give me some example. Yeah.
yeah, so I'll give you a few examples. So when I before I was married, I did a lot of mountain climbing, so I loved, climbing volcanoes and things like that. So, and my brothers would do it too, and um, but it takes a lot of time and it's money, and the equipment for mountaineering is expensive. You have all your gear, and so I just, like, when we were first married and having kids, I just cut that all out. Like, I just didn't do it anymore. And so
Mhm.
sometimes we'd do little family walks on a park trail or on a little mild hiking trail somewhere nearby, just as a family. But I literally cut out that out of my life. Now, as my kids have gotten older, we've invested in some nicer gear, and I've actually taken my boys out backpacking, and we've done a little bit of mountain climbing, not a lot, but it's mostly backpacking and hiking. So we're starting to phase that back in as we're into a different phase of our lives where our kids are older. So that's just
Yeah.
one example. Um, Another thing is, a lot of people spend a lot of money on entertainment. My wife and I, like, we really don't go out to the movies very often. We decided that going out to the movies was kind of pricey, and we decided that was just something we weren't going to do.
Okay.
So if we do catch a movie, it's usually because we, got it from someone else, or, we just went a cheap route.
Okay.
Checked out a movie from the library and popped in a DVD, even though a DVD's no longer the most recent technology.
Here we
So,
go back just a little bit right there. It's probably about 5 years back nowadays.
yes, right. So we don't spend a whole lot on entertainment. We keep that part of our budget is very small. If you were to look at our family budget, we
Okay.
spend very little on entertainment. We create our own fun, our own entertainment.
Do you guys have like cable, Netflix, Disney Plus,
Yeah,
Paramount
so
Plus? Got all
we
types of.
cut all that out.
Wow,
We
that is
did.
good,
We cut it all out.
but that's
In
that's
fact,
that's that's good. I mean, really, it's people need to hear that. But yeah, so keep going. Sorry, I interrupted.
oh no, all I was gonna say is that when we were first married, we didn't even have a TV. Like, we just said we weren't even gonna buy a TV because
Yeah,
we were just so busy with work and with school, and just getting a career started, that we could do fun things together as a family, and we didn't really need a TV. So for a long time, we didn't even own a TV. So we just cut that out.
okay. So no TV in the house, no TV, no TV, no cable right now, or at a certain point in time. Certain point in time, no TV, no. Got movies from the library that sustains you enough. I'm assuming you have internet access because you wouldn't be talking to me right now. There's plenty of stuff out on the internet.
Yeah, I'm
Plenty
talking about like
of
really
stuff.
early on, but it's we do have internet, and so like today we do have TVs in the house, and they're connected to the internet. We don't have cable or anything like that, but and mostly, what we tell our children is most of the times when we're on the TV, it's for educational purposes. So, and every once in a while we will, they'll do some entertainment, but we're careful of what kind of entertainment they're watching,
Mm,
for moral and ethical reasons, and just teaching virtue to our children. But
yeah.
um, we try to stay away from expensive streaming subscriptions, things like that, even though they can be relatively cost effective today.
Yeah. We talked about we talked again. We talked about finance. I also talked a little bit about inheritance a little bit. Where we bridged into that a little bit. I want to review it just for the new audience. What are the major lessons that you feel like you've learned generationally from the previous generation? What's some of the major financial lessons that you feel like you've learned?
So you don't have to have a big income to become wealthy. And I think a lot
Okay.
of people think you have to have a big income to become wealthy.
Okay.
And this is something my grandparents taught me and something my parents taught me. But you literally, if you just save a little bit every month and you put it away, and some of it's emergency fund, but you take that savings you have, you do a longer term savings in case you lose your job or something like that. So that would sustain you from 3 to 6 months.
Mhm.
But then you're also doing savings towards a time when you're not going to work at all, towards retirement basically, and you want to invest that. So you typically invest that in mutual funds. There's other vehicles you could use, but mutual funds is the most common one. ETFs and mutual funds,
Okay.
and put in some sort of retirement account, like a Roth IRAs are very advantageous. Probably one of the best out there. Some of the 401ks through employers can be really good, especially if they have a really strong match.
Mhm.
Those can be wonderful programs. But you're just saving a little bit every day, or not every day, but every month at least. And over a long period of time, that grows and multiplies. So it's kind of interesting with my dad. Like, he had a good job and he had a very consistent employer for 35 years, which is rare today. Most people don't stay with one employer for 35 years. That's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Um, but I think he ended up with more money than what he ever expected, and it was because he saved early and often, and then he invested it. And when you get a spike in the market, you've got a nest egg. Your wealth can, sometimes it can double in just a short period of time because of what the market does, and so you're
Mhm.
benefiting from the synergies of the market. Um, and so you get to a certain point where your growth and your wealth starts becoming exponential, and that's really what you want. But it takes a lot of patience to get to that point. And so being patient and investing that money is really important. And then as you get older, towards the end of your life, setting up a trust fund for your children is really important. And so not just having a will, but having an actual trust fund, and that protects it more against other hands getting to that money. So it could be the government that you're protecting it from, or just other individuals who want a piece of it. Um, and it just creates a more secure scenario for your children to be able to use that monies in the future. So I think I mentioned this on our last one, but I've benefited from monies that my grandparents have set aside, and that's been a huge blessing to me.
Where did you learn about money? Like, I know you probably said this in times past, but just for review, where do you learn about money and investing in particular? I mean, you got a lot of great information. You seem to be well knowledge and very stable in your ability to not only decrease spending but also maximize off investing. Where did you learn that from?
Yeah, so some of it's just learning in the home from my dad. My dad had a good financial mind, and he was a good manager. But also, I mean, I went my bachelor's degree. I went to Brigham Young University, Idaho, and I majored in business management. So I took a lot of accounting and finance classes, and done a lot of
That helps.
personal study, right? So
Yeah.
picked up other books. One that I really recommend that people read is Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think that's a
Yeah.
really good one by Robert Kiyosaki. That's kind of
Yeah.
become a classic. That's just a good fundamental book for everyone to kind of read and understand how our society works financially, and how you can benefit yourself. So but yeah, there's a lot of good books out there, and I think it helps a lot of people if you just automate the process, and that way you don't have to think too much about it. With all the electronics and technology that we have today, you can actually automate your finances, so that you don't. It basically removes the discipline factor, because a lot of times people don't have the discipline to do these things. But if you have savings on automatic withdraw from your, as soon as that paycheck hits, you automatically send it to your savings account or
Right.
to your investment account. then it's just automatically happening. You're just automatically building wealth over time, and you don't have to like consciously think about it too much. So automating some of those processes is huge. And I think a lot of people still don't do that today, and they should make it an automatic process.
What are your top? You mentioned the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. What are your top 3 financial books? 3 to 5. Give me top 3 to 5. If you've done your research, I'm pretty sure you got 5. You got a top 5. What's give me your top 5. But if you don't have top 5, give me top 3.
Yeah. So yeah, there's some good ones out there. Let me just think here for a moment. So I'm blanking on the one author's name.
Or who are some financial gurus out there that you really respect?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm my favorite one. I'm blanking on right now the author's name, but
well, let me pivot it then. What are some general? You give me some philosophies of thought as it relates to finances. Give me 2 more that you think are pertinent to the consumer. Like one of them is automate finances. Another one is invest in doing your research on finances. Another one is having financial meetings with your family. Those are general philosophies that you're leveraging in order to help streamline your finances. Give me 2 more out there just for the consumer that's looking to try to rebuild let's say somebody's looking at this and they find this interesting, which I do, and they're like, okay, what is the list of things that I could do point by point to help me reestablish myself? Because maybe I'm spending poorly and right now, and I'm looking at this podcast and I'm trying to figure out, okay, he's saying some good stuff. What's his bullet point, step by step, on how to bridge back into having good financial spending and investment?
Yeah. So I think, Dave Ramsey's a big name, but Dave Ramsey, I love the way he outlines things. It's just so basic and it's simple and it works.
Mm-hmm.
So Dave is a really good one.
Yep.
I recommend the Ramsey program, Ramsey Solutions. And then of course, Robert Kiyosaki's got some really good understanding, especially if you want to be like a small business owner, an entrepreneur. The way he approaches things is really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, I'm just blanking on my other.
No, this is good though.
I can't even remember their names.
But those are those are my personal go-tos. Like if I'm looking at general philosophies of thought, look, that is a great spectrum of broad thought because they both talk about the opposite. They both talk in opposites of one another within a similar vein, right? Robert Kiyosaki talks about good debt and bad debt kind of issue. Yeah. Dave Ramsey says all debt is bad debt. He encourages the linear opposite, and I think I always believe that those 2 books and those 2 presentations are great comparisons of thought as it relates to having a balanced sort of a balanced thought on how to leverage debt, but being very careful not to leverage debt in a way that's going to cause catastrophic accountability. So I agree with you. I mean, those are really solid things there. Those are my 2 go-tos. Like if I'm looking at how to balance out my how to navigate financially without going too much into investment, those would be the top 2 on my list right now. I also like this podcast called Earn Your Leisure. Are you familiar with it? It's a more Afrocentric. It's directed towards urban community.
Oh, cool.
Love these guys. They do a solid. They do more education on investments than they do anything else. But I would say those are the top 3 for me: is Dave Ramsey, Robert Kiyosaki, and Earn Your Leisure podcast are probably my top 3
Nice.
with regards to leveraging debt, avoiding bad debt, and learning a little bit more about investments and investing. So, is there any investment gurus that you think are out there? Who's your investment guru? Speak of the
Yeah,
Beatles.
that's who I was trying to remember. Peter Drucker was the name that's coming to me, but he's more of like the management guru. But
Okay.
um, I can't. I'm having a senior moment here, I guess.
No, we got a couple more. We're sort of right at the line here. Because as far as the hard shift, I wanted to ask you one more question here. And that is, you said 100K salary is not is more than enough. What would you say is in this society, if you're doing your finances right, and let's say you got a family of five. Let's go. We're gonna meet you in the middle here. Let's say you got a family of five. What do you think is a sustainable income if a man wants to provide for his household? What number do you think he could successfully sustain his household? Let's say he has five kids. Give me a number.
I think depending on what part of the United States you live in, if you're living in the right area, you can grow and sustain a family on 55 to 65,000 a year. Is totally doable. You
I
can't
agree.
do it, but
Yeah.
you make sacrifices. Typically, more advantageous would be like the 75 to 85,000 range. You'd be able to save a lot more doing that.
Mhm.
But you certainly would be able to provide for your family in that 55 to $65,000 range if you're in an area of the country where the cost of living is reasonable.
Yeah. Give me the
Not
variables outside of that.
big city, urban area. Yeah.
Yeah. Give me the variables that would allow me to live under a 55K salary.
Yeah. So you would either have to rent or own a home in an area where you could, typically your home ownership is under, 200,000,
Mhm.
in an area like that, or maybe just a little bit over,
Okay.
depending financing program you could get yourself into, if
Mhm.
you're turn vet or first time home buyer or something like that. There's special government programs that can help with that.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, somewhere where, like the part of the country I live in, like fuel is cheaper than most other areas of the country. So that helps. Um, and, groceries are cheaper in this area than I'm in, compared to other areas for, tax reasons, but also because of food sources. There's a lot of agriculture close by,
Mhm.
so that makes a big difference in the area that I'm in. Am I answering your question?
You are.
If I went
Your social housing, foods of housing 200K, which is about 50, about 50, 1,000 to $1,500, 1,500 a month, probably more. Is once you get to that once you get towards 200 plus range, it almost ranges between about 1,500 to 2,000 a month.
Yeah, that's about right.
Right. And then being in the area with uh food supply that has food supply. What are the other variables? So I got food supply. We got rent around at 1,500, 2,000 a month. Food supply that'll roughly what about with a family of four. Yeah, we say 200, 250 a week, $1,000 a month. So roughing down those numbers, it's getting real tight. It's getting real
Yeah,
tight at that point there. That's about $2,500, $3,000 right there off the
yeah.
jump. Um, yeah. And what are the other variables you think could decrease those costs or help you streamline so that you could live on a 55K salary?
So one of the things that I've seen that's been really helpful for our family is most people spend too much money on food. So food is very
Um,
expensive in our society,
yeah.
um, because of the legal environment. We have a lot of bills that have been passed. Some of them are over 100 years old, but they make our food really expensive. We don't realize that as Americans. If you go over to Europe and you go to a restaurant and buy food over at a restaurant in Europe, or just buy food from the local market,
Yeah.
good, healthy, nutritious food is so much cheaper in Europe than it is here in America. And it's because a lot of it's because of our legal market and our
Mhm.
regulatory market, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
The government's got its hand in our food too much, and we kind of need to deregulate that. Um, but people spend a ton on going out to eat. They spend a ton on latte
Mhm.
and coffees
Yeah.
and snacks. And so sometimes my coworkers think I'm a little weird because I'm not really lavish and stopping and picking up, a drink for the day, or going out to eat at a nice restaurant for lunch. And sometimes I'll just pack my own lunch. I still try to be social and everything, but like, spending, um, spending within a reasonable amount with our food. So my wife's a really good cook, and we try to teach my children to cook well. And so we're just kind of a cooking family. So we buy all of our stuff in scratch. So I notice a lot of families don't buy flour at the stores anymore, or they don't buy, just eggs, a lot of basic stuff, because it's all processed stuff that they buy. But if you buy food, you buy the scratch materials and you buy in bulk, you can save a lot of money. So for example, my wife and I actually buy actual wheat, like from a local farmer, in 25-pound bags that hasn't been ground. And we actually have a wheat grinder, and we grind our own wheat and we make our own bread, and it's absolutely delicious. And I can't even eat store-bought bread anymore, because it's not like, even the expensive store-bought bread, I don't even like eating it anymore because it tastes so bad compared to the stuff we make at home.
So I got to do a hard stop here on this interview. This is continued. This is part 9 of our meeting.
Nice.
But this is good stuff, though. This is good stuff. I really admire your lifestyle, your way of living, your philosophy of things. Like, I really gravitate towards it. I mean, sincerely. It for me as a father, it really speaks to me with regards to how do I get the most out of life without feeling like I have to spend an arm and a leg, and what does life enjoyment look like that doesn't involve the commercialized version of it, where we go out to eat all the time, and where we got to go to the movies, and we got to go to the mall all the time. What does a solid, healthy life look like that is balanced but still modern? I mean, that's something that still rides me. That, like I said, I think you have a solid answer to. So I'd like to continue the conversation. I got to shift gears here because I'm a step behind here. But till next time, I would ask for a last comment, but I think we're going to end on that hard note there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Philip, it was nice having you. I look forward to meeting with you again. I think I want to join you on your podcast either at the end of the day. Is that the end of the day?
I think tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. So
I think we're scheduled tomorrow. So
yeah, so we'll see you tomorrow. You are becoming a good friend, online friend indeed, in these spaces here. At least a place of admiration on my end. Every time I speak to you, there's something on this that said, man, this is a really solid guy. So really appreciate our interactions here.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. God bless.
God bless you too, brother. Bye.
All right. Take care.